Hello. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Carolyn Bolt, and I welcome you to the 3 keys of office design and effective ROI. This is the first video of 3 videos. Let's start with why you are here. Maybe you're ready to open your first office, be your own boss, have the opportunity to fulfill your dreams of healing lives and having a successful business. Or maybe you've been in business a while and you're ready to make more money. With that, you're considering a new office or a renovation of your existing. Either way, what I believe about you is that you know that a big undertaking and you want to make sure you make the best decisions possible. You want to be wise and avoid costly mistakes. And you know that a quality office is important. But what does that really mean? So here's my bold promise to you. In this 3-part series, I will unveil the path from fear and uncertainty to realizing an office that effortlessly flows, sets you apart from the competition, and yields up to a 20% increase in revenue, all while alleviating overwhelm. So get ready to be inspired and empowered as we embark on this transformative journey. First, I want to make sure you're in the right place and get the most out of your time together. So I encourage you to get out whatever you use to take notes and start by answering this question. What motivated you to sign up for this series? Are you curious about the design of your office can help or hinder your success? Are you interested in what a quality office environment includes and how to achieve it? Or are you attracted to having a path and not being overwhelmed? Whatever your motivation, I fully support you. No matter why you're here, I'm excited that you are, and I want you to gain great value from our short time together. I plan to give you the foundation to make the best decision with the budget you have and avoid mistakes that will cost you money and success. I'm going to teach you the 3 keys that we use every day to create extraordinary, impactful, and practical spaces that achieve 10 to 20% increase in revenue for our doctors. So please jot down a quick dollar amount to the following questions. What would it add to your bottom line to increase the efficiency and effectiveness in the flow of your office? How many more patients could you easily see? What other services could you offer? Do you have a number? So let me ask you another question. How much is attracting and retaining just 10% more of your absolutely ideal patient worth to you? Well, we know that your office design does impact your success, either positively or negatively. And I want to help you understand more. But why am I qualified to talk to you? So I'm the co-founder of CrossFields. We are an architectural interiors firm that works virtually with holistic health and wellness providers that want to elevate their success and impact more lives. I'm a registered interior architectural designer. I have over 40 years of experience in all aspects of commercial design. I work with my husband, Scott. He's an architectural engineer and registered contractor. We founded CrossFields together in 2004. And in 2011, we changed our focus specifically to chiropractic and holistic health. So why chiropractic and holistic health? Because we know firsthand the impact chiropractic can make on a life. 30 years ago, I was faced with a hard decision. My daughter at 2 years old had developed chronic tonsillitis. Doctors wanted to remove her tonsils, but I was hesitant to have her undergo surgery at such a young age. Today, 30 years later, thanks to chiropractic care, my daughter still has her tonsils, and my grandchildren are under chiropractic care also. The impact that care of my daughter's life made me a lifelong advocate of chiropractic and holistic health. But why is a business focus? Well, in 2003, I was hired by Life University in Georgia to help with the renovation and design of their facilities. Over the years, we were involved in more than 100 projects around campus, and they became our dominant client. So during this time, we were immersed in the business and philosophies and the struggles of the chiropractor, and we began to be part of the mission. In 2009, we had the opportunity to help 2 startup chiropractors in Atlanta, and I fell in love with helping an individual achieve their goals versus the corporate committee model I was used to. Then in 2010, Life asked me to teach a business class. It was not paid assignment, but we jumped at the chance because we knew from years in the commercial design industry that a well-designed quality office environment will elevate success in any industry. And our heart was we wanted more people to trust and respect chiropractic. And we knew we could support that by teaching them that their space is a key factor in people's trust and respect, positively or unfortunately often negatively. So in 2011, we decided to use our gifts to focus on creating impactful and practical environments that will elevate our chiropractor success so that you can go save more lives. We developed a system to work virtually, and over the last 12 years, we have gained a following of over 10,000 doctors that we support through our resources. We have personally served almost 1,000 doctors all over North America and Canada with our one-on-one interior and architectural services. They range from 800 to 12,000 square feet, include startups to dream practices, single practitioners to multi-doctor, many multidisciplinary, and many multi-practice locations. So where are we going? In this video number 1, we're going to discuss key number 1, how to maximize space and flow. Number 2, how to attract and retain patients. Then the last video is key number 3, how to save time and money through the process. This is where I will give you the path to accomplish the quality office with confidence. And at the end of video number 3, we will explore how we can further help you on this journey. So let's get started. These resources will include more free resources for the do-it-yourselfer, how to work with us if you do want a done-for-you one-on-one full-service design. And now I'm excited to introduce our new e-course to fill the gap as the done-with-you option. So let's start into our subject. We know that a quality office design will elevate your success. And your success is directly related to the quality of your office design, which is your environment. So I always say the quality of your environment is directly related to the forethought, planning, and experience that's put into the process. From your location through the space plan to the sound system, every detail is important to the efficiency and effectiveness of that environment. So we're not just talking about a space plan, we're talking about an environment. So what is the focus of our quality office design? So I just said it, a quality office design creates an environment, and that environment intentionally creates an experience. And this experience is what you want your patients to have, and that will increase your revenue. So how do you get there? So let's look at the 3 keys. The first one is maximize space and flow. The second was attract and retain patients. And the third is save time and money. And we're going to focus in this first video on the number 1 key, maximize space and flow. So let's start with the foundational principle that we embrace in all design. That is, you've heard it, form follows function. And for us, that means that form and function are inseparable. You can't just focus on the function and then make it pretty. You've got to think of it cohesively, holistically, as you would know that word. But we have to begin with function. So if things don't work, it doesn't matter how pretty it is. So function, the definition of function would be the purpose for which something is designed or exists, to operate, perform as specified, and to work properly. So the first priority of any space, as I said before, is that it must function well. And what does that include? So that includes the space itself, which is the right amount of space that is big enough for each activity but not too big, and we'll go into that more in the next few slides. And then the flow. You must also have a space that's laid out to achieve your greatest flow. This will translate directly as savings to your bottom line. This will keep your facility overhead costs down. It will reduce time wasted, allowing you more quality time with your patients. It will reduce staff frustration, and it'll enhance better communication with all employees. So we're going to start with number 1, space. So space involves both the size, which we talked about, the right amount of space, not too big or not too little, and how many of each one of those spaces you're going to need. And that's how you determine your square footage. So how much space do you need? And we always start with making a list. So I encourage you right now to start a list of all the different spaces you need in a chiropractic office, in your chiropractic office. And the way we do this is the way we start, is we start by putting that information on a spreadsheet. So you can see on the left-hand side is a list of all the spaces. And then the middle section here is how big each one of those spaces are. And then we encourage you to have 2 columns to multiply those together. The first set of columns, we call it the minimum. The minimum is what you absolutely have to make your business plan work. The maximum is what you'd like to have or that will accommodate you past your 5-year mark. So you need to think of your minimum as your first 5 years and your maximum past that 5 years. That's one way to think about it. So what you'll end up with is you'll have a list on the left-hand side with all the spaces. You'll have how large each one of those spaces are, how many square feet per area, etc. Then in the minimum column, for example, in this one, we have 5 seated in the reception in the minimum and 7 seated in the reception in the maximum. You'll continue this process down, such as adjusting. You'll have a larger adjusting and a smaller adjusting. And you come down to the bottom and you'll get the total number of square feet you need for those offices itself. Then you need to add in the corridors and the exits and the thicknesses of the walls, etc. And that's a circulation factor. So we have a 40% circulation factor, which then totals up to what we call your interior net square footage. Now, this number in this chart that we're looking at is 1,127 versus 1971. So that shows the minimum and the maximum for inside the walls. But when you're going to look for space and you're going to go look for a lease, that's only inside the walls. That does not add up to what you would actually be leasing, what's your gross building allowance. So in a retail strip center, you're going to add about 4% to come up with your gross building or your rentable space, we'll call it. And then in other types of spaces, you'll have different amounts of addition. But I'm just trying to give you an overview right now of what we're doing. And I have resources to go deeper for you if you're interested. But just to give you a big picture, this number of how many square feet you need is going to tell you what you can fit inside of your space. You'd be surprised how many clients come to us and they've already leased a space and they've never gone through this exercise. So I'm encouraging you to do that. The next exercise is the way we come through how big are each one of the spaces is we look at what equipment's in the space and what's happening around each one of the equipment. So I want to give you a good rule of thumb is that you need about 3 feet around any piece of equipment that you're physically working around, whether it's a massage table, an adjusting table, a mats table for physical therapy, etc. And then you need enough space between things for people to get in and out. So all of these guidelines can be found on our website, and I'll show you where you can find that in just a little bit. The next thing is flow. You must also have a space that is laid out to achieve the greatest flow. So as you think about your office space, there's actually 3 different types of flow. You have a new patient flow, and this is typically escorted. Someone will escort a new patient through the space. Then you have an existing patient flow, and this is typically unescorted. And then you'll have the staff flow, which is probably the most important, that they use the least amount of steps and use the least amount of energy to get through their day. So as we look at flow, we start with those little boxes I was showing you. We actually use bubbles, and we start to look at what needs to be connected together into your space and how things need to be aligned. So this is the foundation before you ever do a space plan. If you want to find out more information, I can't go any deeper right now because I really wanted to get into some case studies and show you the impact this makes. But if you want some more resources to do it yourself, if you go to our website, you'll find a special section called Planning Your Office. And if you go down to the second and third, we'll talk about establish how much space you need. And we'll go deeper into what I just talked about and also determining the best flow for your ideal office. But now I want to get into some case studies so you can really see the impact that these different parts of this one key had to do with their success. So here's a case study, Dr. Kelsey Brenner. She came to us out of Chicago for a neurologic wellness, and they originally came to us because they wanted decorating help. But this just shows you the right amount of space. So as I said, they came to us originally wanting decorating help. This was an old building downtown Chicago that the landlord had brought back to what's called white box, or it was a clean slate. So the landlord architect, which was free for them, created a plan and totally based on the information that the landlord architect asked the client. And we can tell that they don't really know chiropractic. The doctor came to us to help with decorating. But as we discussed their needs, which came up with how many people they want to sit in the reception because they needed chairs, I quickly saw that they didn't have the right amount of space. So let's look at 5 areas. They wanted 12 seats in the reception area. And then I know this type of practice, it's a functional neurology practice, and I knew that the sizes of these little rooms up here for diagnostic were not quite big enough. I also saw that immediately all these doors in the hallway were going to cause a bottleneck, not to mention that would be a code issue. The other thing that we looked at was that they wanted more seating in their lounge. This lounge wouldn't hold as much as they wanted. And then I knew that the restrooms were way too big for ADA. And then this required water fountain was sticking out in the corridor. So they went ahead and hired us to help do them a revised space plan. And this is what we came up with. So we did lose one of the 5, we went down to 5 exam treatment areas, but in that to get the more seating that they needed. But in that compromise, we determined that we could have 2 rooms that were more multi-purpose and be larger because the rooms the architect wouldn't even do everything that they wanted to do in it. And then the other 3 rooms could actually be smaller, so they didn't totally lose all that they were trying to do. The other thing we did is we made the diagnostic rooms the right size. We put barn doors on them to avoid the collisions in the corridor and keep the flow going. And then rework this entire wet area so that we have the 2 restrooms. They actually they needed 2 restrooms, but not both of them had to be ADA based on the codes. And then they got a much larger lounge, and we were able to inset in the water coolers. So they ended up with a much more functional space before we ever started to focus on the form or the 3-dimensional space. But here's the 3D of the space, and that was finally built out. And you can see where we go. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is Dr. Eric Blundy. He's in South Carolina. And this focused on the right amount of space, and then we're going to get into a little bit about a flow. So in this case study, Dr. Blundy bought a building that had been a doctor's office before. And in that, he originally wanted one exam room and 2 or 3 adjusting rooms. So square footage wise, he had the right amount of space because these rooms were quite large for a typical adjusting. But the cost of actually tearing all this out and rebuilding was prohibited. So in the compromise, we have 2 adjusting, and we did a combination exam x-ray room for him that also could be a 3rd adjusting room. So that was where we focused on a compromise. The other thing is that when you walked in, I don't know if you can see these dotted lines, those were all walls with a little bitty window right here, and the front desk took up this entire space. So we knew that the front desk area was too big. He wanted a big open therapy area, so that was an easy thing to get through. And then he really wanted this whole space to feel more enlightened and opened so that when he was working with patients, he could actually see people in the reception area. So that's what we did. This is actually the wall looking back here between the corridors. So when you'd walk in, this is the wall that you would see with the 2 doors. And by opening it up, this is what we were able to achieve. And this is a frosted glass that he can literally see through, but it blocks the first view of seeing all those doors. And then this was the old front desk area that we opened up to have the flow that we wanted and the visual impact that we wanted. And you'll hear from him later in our second video when he does a testimonial on how the impact was to his bottom line. In this case study, we're going to look at Dr. Mark Ellis. Once again, he came to us for decorating, and immediately I saw issues with the flow. and there were bottlenecks, and how could we, this is also going to talk about how we can use multi-purpose space. So here's the floor plan that once again the landlord's architect did for free, and it really didn't have a lot of new work. This wall was being built, really, and this wall was being built, this space was being broken up, but the rest of it was pretty much what it was. So immediately I saw that there was a huge bottleneck in this area. So this is the front door. This would be where the lobby would be. This would be where the front desk would be. And the architect had proposed a little window. But all of these doors and all of this happening was just going to cause a bottleneck. Plus he wanted a checkout, and there was no space to do a checkout except back and forth to the front desk. And the visual impact when you walked in was not quite what it could be if we could get this area to work. So what we did was we opened it up some. So this wall that was being built, we stopped it. So we gave plenty of space here. We created a more transparent wall to separate the space. And then we opened this back up in this area and opened this wall and moved this door back to create the flow around this very key area that he needed. Then the rest of it we did with decorating. So here was the space. So this was the front door. This is where they proposed a window for the front desk and that door. And this is what we did. We opened it up. They still have a window, but it's much less like a little sliding window. It's much more like an open desk, but created privacy for their patients. And then this is where the lobby seating was going to be. So we did a lot of drama in the ceiling, not too much expense, but just something to keep it from being so plain and boring. And then this was the open therapy room that they had, and that we were able to turn into a multi-purpose room for lectures. Okay, the last study I'm going to go through is actually a white box space starting from scratch. So this is focused on looking at all the options when you look at flow. So how does flow work? The more options you can have, the better. So this is Dr. Marakara, actually here in the Atlanta area. And this was a project that we actually did full construction on. So this was his space. It was only about 1,100 square feet, and it was near downtown Atlanta. So it's primo property. And it was what we call a white box. And you can see a white box we call it a white box because they typically have sheetrock and it looks white, but it typically has plumbing in it and typically has sheetrock in it, but there's no other walls. So this is where we started with totally clean slate, which we love to start with because we can get the most, maximize the most out of it. So we started with his spreadsheet and he was right on the money. This is where he started, 1,172 square feet, and he rented 1,175 square feet. So we started with these blocks that we had created for him when we helped him do the spreadsheet. And we started with this flow, and then we began to develop space plans. So once again, this is 1,100 square foot space, and this is 11 different ways it could be laid out. And each one of them functioned, but going through and looking at which one was going to flow the best and function the best with the least amount of waste was part of this exercise. So this is what we call a space study test fit. So when we perform them, we do perform a lot of them because it's much cheaper to do it on paper than to wish you had done it after you moved in. But this is the plan that he chose. And you can see it's a very simple little space. A couple of adjusting rooms, some therapy, x-ray, very typical massage room, etc. And then here is the finished product. This is the construction process and then the finished product. So we're almost to the end. This concludes what I was going to teach you today. So what we learned was the first priority of any space is that it must function well. And the space has to have the right amount of space. A space that's too big will be inefficient. But if it's not big enough, it'll impede your flow. And you must also have a flow that lays out to achieve the greatest flow. So spaces that lay out to achieve the greatest flow. So this translates directly as savings to your bottom line, keeping facility overhead costs down, reducing time wasted, allowing more quality time with patients, reducing staff frustration, and enhancing better communication with employees. So in our next video, video number 2, we're going to focus on the second key to increase your ROI. Attract and retain patients, Video 2 will come to your inbox within 24 to 48 hours. So check your inbox in that time frame. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you there.